call the honourable member for Hunter.
And I thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. You can hear the member for Calare moderating his language. You know, out there in the electorate, the Minister for Agriculture, the member for Calare, and their partners in the Nationals are saying, you know, we can't have these Chinese investing in our farmland. The dog whistle, Mr Deputy Speaker, is alive and well. But down here, when the member for Calare gets to his feet, he couldn't say it often enough, in very moderate tones. Oh, Mr Deputy Speaker, this is not about discouraging investment in our farmlands. This is just about making sure people know what's going on. Well, Mr Deputy Speaker, if only that were true, Mr Deputy Speaker, we know what this is about. This is about introducing into this country, for the first time in our history, a discriminatory foreign investment regime. From the day this bill passes the parliament, if you're a citizen of the United States or a citizen of Chile or a citizen of New Zealand and you want to invest in Australian agriculture, you will face a $1 billion screening threshold. If you are a citizen of just about any other country in the world, in particular in Asia, which is what the Agriculture Minister has in mind in particular, you will face a screening threshold of just $15 million. $15 million for farmland and $55 million if you are classified as a Stage 1 agribusiness processor or higher. So just let's not have this one conversation outside this place and another conversation inside this place. Members like the member for Clare need to be consistent and call and present their case for what it is, and that is a dog whistle to those who have unfounded fears about, first, the level of Asian investment in Australian agriculture, and second, how that might impact on Australian agriculture. So that's just one thing this bill does, Mr Deputy Speaker. It also makes other changes to the Foreign Acquisitions and Takeovers Act of 1975, namely and including the introduction of civil penalties and additional and stricter criminal penalties to ensure foreign investors and intermediaries do not profit from breaking the rules. The bill also enables the transfer to the Australian Tax Office of responsibility for regulating foreign investment in residential real estate, which will further enable stronger enforcement and better compliance with the existing rules, and also enables the lowering of the screening thresholds, as I've suggested. And surprisingly, I want to go back and concentrate on the agriculture and agribusiness components, but I do want to say that the opposition, while not opposing the measures here, does not accept that the issue of Sydney property prices will be comprehensively addressed by these changing peak housing bodies, such as the Property Council of Australia, have expressed concern that indeed the bill may serve to undermine rather than promote housing affordability in our capital cities. But, Mr Deputy Speaker, again, I do want to return to, for me, what is the most important aspects of the bill, and that is the impact on Australian agriculture. It's well known that if we are to fully capitalise on the so-called dining boom, or in other words, if we are to fully take opportunity, that opportunity provided by growing global food demand, but in particular growing demand for high-quality food amongst the growing middle classes of Asia, we will need substantial levels of investment in this country. Just let's take stock of what's happening in agriculture, because it's a very interesting point, because we all talk very optimistically about the future in agriculture, as we should, but it's fair to say that the challenges in agriculture are just as significant as the opportunities. For example, productivity in Australian agriculture has at best plateaued. More likely it's in decline, but at best it has plateaued. Government investment in research and development has shrunk in real terms. The rate of adoption and extension of that innovation is poor. Our share of global market trade is actually in decline, not on the rise. Our workforce is ageing. Our weather patterns are working against us. Our limited natural resources are more likely shrinking than growing. The allocation of those resources is in many cases inefficient. We remain too dependent on commodity markets, where we are typically price takers, subject to the vagaries of global markets. And very importantly, we are underdone in infrastructure terms, both on-farm and off-farm. Off-farm in particular in just about every area: road, rail, ports, indeed telecommunications. So the key message, or one of the key messages for Australian agriculture, or more particularly for governments which might seek to guide the future of Australian agriculture, is in addition to productivity more generally, including the more efficient allocation of natural resources and the sustainable use of those resources, is how we attract the significant amounts of investment we will require to fully capitalise on those opportunities. And welcome the Minister here. It's good to see he's speaking on another second reading debate on a bill. It's becoming regular practice, although he wasn't prepared to do so on the EPBC last week, but I'll return to that. But how do we attract this investment, and how much will we need? Now, I've cited it here before, and I give credit to the member for Hume, member of this place, who was, I think, one of the primary authors of the Greening Pastures report, which, amongst other things, suggested that out to 2050 we would need $600 billion, that's with a B, $600 billion worth of investment in agriculture out to the year 2050 if we're to fully realise our dreams. And it's axiomatic, as a country, an island continent with a population of 23, 24 million people, that we just don't have the domestic savings to meet that thirst or hunger for investment. And on that basis, as has always been the case as a country, we will remain heavily reliant on the savings of others for that investment. There is a lot of talk about our domestic superannuation funds, and like everyone in this place, I would like to see more of our domestic savings through our superannuation funds going into Australian agriculture, but even if we took all of it, it wouldn't be enough. So we need this investment desperately. So the question becomes, does this bill enhance our prospects on that front or make it more difficult? Well, it's fair to say that this bill sends all the wrong signals. Competition for capital around the world is intense, and those looking to secure returns in agriculture as an opportunity to exploit growing demand around the world have many choices. They can invest in places like New Zealand or South America, or they can come here to Australia. Of course, they'll look at where the returns are, but they'll also look for the path of least resistance. And all this bill, Mr Deputy Speaker, will do is create a huge log jam at the Foreign Investment Review Board, which will be dealing with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of applications, which in the scheme of things are 11th order issue and are unlikely to derive from the FIRB an adverse report of any description. This bill will send away foreign investment in this country. It's also a gouge. It dramatically increases application fees, putting money into the coffers of this government, but at the same time acting as a further disincentive to that investment. I return to what I said in the beginning. This is just a dog whistle. This is a message to rural Australia and feeding off those concerns people have, legitimate concerns, mainly due to misinformation about the level of Asian investment in Australian farmland. Now, we recognise this concern in government, and we were the first to suggest that we should have a foreign investment register in this country. We left office before we had the opportunity to implement that. The now government said it would do the same. It's taken 2 years for it to do so, and we're told that we still won't have a register until about January next year, as I understand it. That'll be well on track to 3 years it's taken this government to do the most important thing, and that is to build transparency into the equation so people with a click of a mouse can quickly see who's investing in what, where, and how much they are paying. That's what we need. We need, as leaders in this place, to be not fueling the misunderstandings in the regions, not fueling the unnecessary concerns, but showing leadership and demonstrating to people and showing people and helping people to fully comprehend that foreign investment in our agriculture sector is unequivocally a good thing, and we simply can't get enough of it. Now, Mr Deputy Speaker, I've mainly spoken about agriculture. I should say something about agribusiness. Now, we do have a future in food manufacturing in this country. We must have a future in food manufacturing in this country. We have a very solid food manufacturing sector in this country when you think of meat processing and dairy, for example, as key manufacturers, and they have a very bright future. But the range of endeavours in the future will be almost limitless if we are smart, and we do need to make sure that we don't put unnecessary red tape in the way of those investors. And this bill does this for agribusiness. It goes to first stage manufacturers. That means someone producing a jam, for example, gets caught up on this. If we want to expand food manufacturing, we need investment, and this is the wrong way to go about it. Dare I say, country of origin labelling is a bit the same. Asking people to implement this thing after the procrastination of this government for so long, within 6 to 12-month periods, will cause unnecessary red tape and compliance issues and costs, something this government said it was going to do just the opposite on. So, Mr Deputy Speaker, the opposition doesn't oppose these measures. We will send them to a Senate committee, though. We will have these discriminatory thresholds scrutinised for the likely adverse impacts on Australian agriculture and Australian agribusiness. It's been a tumultuous week, Mr Deputy Speaker, in Canberra. The execution of the first-term Prime Minister. That's obviously going to cause disruption right across the government. The minister at the table made it clear in the lead up to the change that he thought the bloke from Point Piper was likely to produce bad results for rural and regional Australia. I share those concerns about the extent to which the new Prime Minister understands the needs and aspirations and challenges of rural and regional Australia. But it is very clear that the minister at the table, in particular the Minister for Agriculture, has very grave concerns about the leadership change and what it might mean for rural and regional Australia. And to his credit, and typically of him, he made those concerns very well known in a very, very public way. The problem now is that he's gone very quiet. He now claims he has an agreement. He has an agreement with the new Prime Minister that's going to do wonderful things, as if he extracted all these concessions from the new Prime Minister that are going to change the face of rural and regional Australia. Now, the only problem with that, Mr Deputy Speaker, is he's given us no detail. He's given us no details of these these concessions he's extracted with great pain to the Prime Minister from the new Prime Minister. Very vague at best, this new red-hot deal he has for rural and regional Australia. We're told that the Prime Minister has promised he'll take the effects test back to Cabinet. He'll take it back, but no promise that it will have effect. And of course, that's causing an enormous rift, not only between the National and Liberal parties, but of course those within the National Party. There seems to be a few different views. But I'm very pleased that the Minister's here, because the Minister...
Mr Joyce and myself, Member for Hunter.
I beg your pardon, Minister?
There's no rift between Mr.
Joyce and myself. I absolutely accept that. Out of respect to you, I absolutely accept.
Just like that.
Accept that, Mr Deputy Speaker. But the Minister at the table can fix this today. When he rises to his feet, he simply tables the agreement. Tables the coalition agreement. What is the big secret, Minister? Surely the Australian people, particularly those living in rural and regional Australia, are entitled to know the basis on which you've now rolled over, and to exclaim that you think the election of Malcolm Turnbull, the boy from Point Piper, is a good thing for rural and regional Australia. Well, it's very simple. It's very simple, Minister. Just get to your feet. When I sit down in 9 seconds' time, Table the coalition agreement and show us in writing what these concessions are that you extracted from the Prime Minister, because I suspect they are nil.
Sadly, the member for Hunter's time has expired, and I